Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker podcast. This is your midweek roundup of all things Maker and embedded and lovely, albeit in audio format. If you are joining us for the first time, this is the audio part of a YouTube show that we run each week on YouTube. And so there are times where you will wonder why it sounds like I'm talking to a camera or a screen, and that's because I am. However, where audio context is needed, I will drop in and give it. And this show sort of harks back to the original idea for what this show always was. And we have had specials when we've gone to conferences and we've done various things. Next week, we're also going to have a special show because we'll be covering the Maker Music Festival, which is something I've talked about at length about in the past. And I mean, you know, being a maker and a musician, of course, I'm going to be quite excited about that. However, this week we're looking at a couple of cool projects, a couple of cool products, and some things on funding websites, which is sort of the core of what makes Electromaker fun. And in amongst that, yes, the ESP32 C6, that's something we talked about in the past, a very Thread and Zigbee-oriented ESP32 chip, and now development board. And Learn Embedded Systems has done a fantastic review of that board. We'll be covering that in this week's show, along with a couple of interesting things on crowd supply, which are both pre-funding. So these are things that haven't gone into their funding yet, but of course you can fund them later. And there's a couple of standout projects from Electromaker as well. So with all of that to get through, let's get on with the podcast. Now, we're going to start the show by looking at the ESP32C6, a board that we talked about when it was announced. However, the development kits are now available, and Learn Embedded Systems has a fantastic video about it. But just before we do, a while ago I mentioned the Maker Music Festival, and I asked if some people would like a special episode about it. And a few people said that they would, so I wanted to give the opportunity now for anyone who is interested in the Maker Music Festival to go to the Maker Music Festival website, because the 2023 edition happened over the last weekend. Rather than try and rush out an episode about it, what I'm going to do is look through and see what things really jumped out to me that I personally like, or that the viewers of the Electromaker Show might like, the more microcontrollery, interesting ones. Although, to be fair, I was an arty school student. I studied music, so I might get slightly carried away with the experimental stuff as well. However, I wanted to, right at the start of this show, say, if you head to makermusicfestival.com, each one of these windows is a fantastic work of art. I'm only just through this first page, and there are many more. Have a look. If there's anything that really jumps out to you, please let me know in the comments of this video what it was, which one it was, and I will feature it in next week's show, which will be the special for the Maker Music Festival. Now, moving on to Learn Embedded Systems, which, the clue is in the title, really. This is a fantastic YouTube channel if you would like to learn about different embedded systems. Now, this video is about the ESP32C6, something we talked about on the show a while ago when it was released or announced, I can't quite remember, and I said we'd come back to it when there were development kits available. Well, now there are, and Learn Embedded Systems has thankfully done a video on one. And it is at the same standard of all of the other videos that he makes, which is very high. Now, in case you're not familiar with the channel, we have featured them on the show a couple of times. I think the last time was the Jolly Roger module, which is that thing that turns an Arduino into a sort of very low-powered ESP type of board. The Jolly module. Not the Jolly Roger, the Jolly module. But yeah, it's a drop-in replacement for the AT Mega 328P chip on the Arduino Uno. It's one of those things that's sort of fun. There's not really any point because you could just plug a Wi-Fi module into it, but it's nice. Since then, he's been incredibly busy. And I massively suggest watching a couple of the videos that I'm not going to cover now. The way he covered the Mango Pi MQ Pro made me want it even more, because the idea of a RISC-V Raspberry Pi Zero alternative is something that I'd really like the idea of. Also, he did a Raspberry Pi server tutorial recently in C, which I watched and I haven't actually tried out myself. Oh, it's the second last video he put out. Okay, it was a month ago. A Pico W web server. If you have the Pico W, I know that Robin from our site has done a version of that in MicroPython. I know I've talked about the C and C++ SDK. This is a web server in C. Anyway, I got a little bit distracted. Back to the main point. Now, as you might expect from a review video, it goes through all of the specs of the ESP32 C6 chip and what the development kit itself can do as well. Now, I want you to go and watch the video. I don't particularly want to spoil it, but in short, the things that make this one kind of interesting is the fact that you get two USB ports, one for power and one for programming and debugging, and that it's very focused towards Thread and Zigbee. The idea is that this thing could run at a very low power level. Presumably, if you had the module itself, I mean, development boards are notoriously not as low power level as they could be because they have all of the extra componentry on board for doing all of the different developing you want to do. But yes, this is a really nice walkthrough of the board, what it can do, but the thing I really like about it as well is that there's a section of this video that is useful to anyone who wants to learn to program ESP32 boards using ESP's own IDF tools. And that is, there's a walkthrough here of how to get the software up and running in Windows, but in Visual Studio. So presumably, I haven't tested this on Linux yet, presumably VS Code in Linux will also work if you just do this the same way. But yes, in short, this is a step-by-step, very quick, but a step-by-step walkthrough of how you can get this thing up and running. And there is one step in here where you choose which development board you are using. And that's where, of course, you can switch it out for your development board. So I thought it was a handy thing to mention. This is also a tutorial for just generally getting started with the ESP IDF in Visual Studio Code. He also talks a bit about Thread and Zigbee and to where the ESP32C6 might fit into a DIY Thread or Zigbee system that you may be wanting to create yourself, and where this fits in terms of being an endpoint or a router or a coordinator, all of these things. And there is a very small a very small Zigbee demo in this video. However, there will be later another video which goes into more detail on Zigbee and Thread, which I'm very much looking forward to. The way that Learn Embedded Systems explains things is very, very clear, and as I said at the very start of this section, the clues in the title, Learn Embedded Systems, and I have learned a lot about embedded systems from this particular YouTube channel. And as always, there'll be a link in the description to that Learn Embedded Systems video if you would like to. I suggest going and subscribing to the channel. As I said, during the section, I think I come back to that channel quite a lot. Now, moving on, BattleBots. I think anyone who's watching this probably also loves the idea of building and maintaining a battle robot. I might be wrong, but I certainly do. And I was very pleased recently to see that Maker's Muse has put a video out about their ant weight BattleBot. Now, ant weight is especially interesting because they have to be under 150 grams in order to compete, which is not a lot of weight. So it's a real balance. Like, how do you get all of your, movements tech in there, your weaponry, and how do you make it work in a way that isn't going to just shatter? Because again, you'll have a very, very low weight bracket to fit in. And this video is about the idea of using TPU as an outer structure, because TPU is a squishy 3D printing material. Yes, I more or less, that's the video, but it's really compelling. Now, if you're into 3D printing, you're probably already familiar with Angus. Maker's Muse is one of the videos that I turned to quite early on when I got into 3D printing, and I know I sort of neglect 3D printing on the Electromaker Show, and that's actually my own fault. I haven't been using my 3D printer much at all for a while, so I haven't really been thinking about it. But if you would like more 3D printing content on this show in general, please do shout about it in the comments. I'm not excluding it because it's not for the Electromaker Show, it's just that it hasn't been at the forefront of my mind, but I'm absolutely more than up for doing more 3D printing stuff. But yes, you're probably already familiar with the Maker's Muse channel. If you are interested in BattleBots in any way, if you're interested in how TPU stands up to being smacked about by BattleBots, you will love this video, and I will of course leave a link to it in the description. If you're enjoying the Electromaker Show, we'd appreciate it if you took a moment to check that you are subscribed to the Electromaker YouTube channel. Once you click subscribe on a channel, you also have the option of turning on all notifications if you would like. These notifications appear only in your browser in the top right corner right here. And as you can see, this is just telling us when Electromaker uploads the weekly videos, including the Product of the Week videos. Also, once you are subscribed, you can find your subscriptions in the side panel just here. Although this isn't so useful for me anymore because I'm subscribed to literally over 2,000 YouTube channels because I kind of look at them as part of my job. I'd also appreciate it if you scroll down under whatever video you happen to be watching and click the like button. The like thing isn't just so we feel good about ourselves, it is a signal to YouTube that you like it and other people who watch similar content to this might also like it, so they're more likely to recommend our videos to people. Thank you so much for putting up with me asking every week for you to click buttons on YouTube. However, if you prefer supporting people in a slightly more traditional way, you can of course shop at our store, which you can find at electromaker.io/shop, or just head to Electromaker and look under the shop tab. As you can see from the name scrolling across the screen, we stock a lot of things from a lot of people, and we have good stock of most things right now. We are not immune to the problems that everybody has in terms of stock, but yes, whether you're looking for your first hobby kit or whether you're looking for a large amount of something for your work, it's worth getting in touch with us and seeing if we'll be able to help you, or just browse our shop to see if there's anything that grabs your eye. Electromaker does not run ads on YouTube. We don't have a Patreon. In the podcast, we don't have adverts there either. Did I say Patreon? In the podcast? I don't know what I said. In the podcast, we don't have adverts there either. We are run purely just off the fact that we are a shop and the website itself. So if you are thinking of buying something, do consider buying it from us. However, this show will be here and free for you regardless. Speaking of which, let's get on with it. Now, on last week's show, we started a contest to win a Nordic Semiconductor NRF7002 development kit. Now, this is Nordic's first Wi-Fi IC. It's a Wi-Fi 6 chip that is on a development board with the NRF5340, which is the flagship Bluetooth Low Energy chip they have, or at least it was, because they've just announced the NRF54 line, something we'll be talking about in a future episode. Anyway, in short, it is a very powerful development kit. There is a whole Product of the Week article that I will link in the description of this video again in case you would like to find out more, but we did start the contest last week to see who was going to win one, and it is now time to announce the winner. And the winner is Squirrel Dev Diaries, who says, "Oh, I have several ideas, but the most prevalent are a low power router for VR streaming from my PC to my Quest 2, and a packet capture device to help me with server reverse engineering." That's two absolutely awesome ideas. The VR element is something that I hadn't even thought of, which is something that I'm vaguely interested in, because while I don't have the time to be a part of it, one of my favorite YouTubers, who's Charles Law, who talked about in the Risk 5 special, is also a big proponent of VR chat. Anyway, congratulations. We will be in touch with you, Squirrel Dev Diaries, as to how we can get this development board out to you. Thank you to everyone who entered these enters these contests. Just a quick reminder, the way that we do it these days is just that we have that hashtag there, so we can scrape everyone who uses that hashtag, make sure there are no duplicates, and then pick a winner at random. It just seems like a much more fun way of doing it for everybody. Now, there will be a new Product of the Week video dropping next week, and of course, that means I'll be talking about it in the show and starting yet another contest, but I'm not going to say exactly what the Product of the Week is going to be yet, because that would be spoilers. It is time to move on to Funding Website Things, which is a section of the show where we look at things that are on funding websites, and there was a time when I thought maybe we should rename this and give it a real name, but it's been so long now that I'm scared to change it. Anyway, we're beginning on Crowdsupply, which, if you're not familiar with it, is essentially Kickstarter for awesome embedded designs. Of course, there's a bunch of those on Kickstarter as well, and we look at that sometimes. The thing I love about Crowdsupply is that people who have a nice idea for a development board, or something esoteric, something that fits into a certain slot, but wouldn't necessarily be able to fund it off their own back, has this website where people who are also into that can go and look at it and decide whether they want to support it. And both of the projects we're looking at today will be pre-launch, which means that they're here, they haven't launched yet, but you can always enter your details here into this box and get an email when it launches, so you can see how much it costs and whether you want to fund it then. So, Open Thing 1 ESP-CM3. The clue is in the title. It's an ESP32 based board that is in the Compute Module 3 form factor, the Raspberry Pi Compute Module form factor. This one grabbed my attention because the Compute Module 4 is a difficult one to sort of replace, because it's a very, very powerful thing in and of itself, right? But the Compute Module 3 was a little bit less powerful, it's a little bit older, but it's still used widely in production. And this basically takes one of the newer, more powerful, well, newish, more powerful ESP32 chips, which is the S2, which, if my memory serves, is the single core 240 megahertz or something. Anyway, regardless, it's a powerful ESP32 microcontroller, and then breaks out all of the in and outs onto the edge connector that works with the Raspberry Pi Compute Module 3. Yeah, I've just seen somewhere. There we go, up to 240 megahertz. My ESP32 memory is not as terrible as I thought. And in short, that's kind of it. There's not all that much more to say about it. You can read the reasons why this was made by the creator on this page just here. I noticed just today when coming back to this, I chose this for the show, and I realized just now when I came back to it that the maker is actually based here in Berlin. So maybe I could get in touch and see if they want to have a chat at some point. That might be a fun thing. If you're interested in interviews with creators of stuff on Crowdsupply, let me know in the comments. I'd be more than happy to give them a short interview about it when this thing goes live. But in short, it asks the question, do you need Linux on your Compute Module 3? If you're already using them in production and you need to be able to replace them, or if you need to scale up something that you're already using them for, because I'm assuming this is going to be aimed at people who are deploying more than one thing. Do you need to run Linux on that thing? Or could you do exactly the same thing using this, probably at a lower power cost? I don't know. So if you would like to find out more, the features and specs are all here, although more or less it's the features and specs of the ESP32S2. If you are interested in finding out more, you can sign up for it just here. We will be coming back to it to find out how much it costs when it goes live. And of course, as I mentioned before, if you would like me to get in touch with the creator and see if they'd like a chat about why they're making this, I'd be more than happy to do that as well. Now, moving over to Anavi, who are putting out another pair of macro pads. And if you're familiar with the name, it's because we did cover them on the show a while ago. The Anavi Macro Pad 10, which was one of those ones that had sort of the nominal $1 goal, but it raised $5,000. People were obviously very interested in it. Was a macro pad which had a rotary encoder on it and was powered by a Seed Xiao RP2040. So it was programmable with the Arduino IDE and in MicroPython. And they also made some versions which were just knobs and with, I believe these were all no, they're all rotary encoders. I tell a lie. And you'll notice there as well, a nice touch here is that it had a little I2C add-on here as well. So you could add any other I2C device to it. And this follows very much in the footsteps of that. Now, this is another pre-launch project, but they have one which is now a 12 key one, so 3x4 rather than 3x3. And they have an arrow key one, but an arrow key one that has a rotary encoder attached to it. Both come with these OLED displays, but you could just pull the OLED display off and put any I2C device there. So my immediate thought when I saw this was, how cool would it be to put some kind of gesture sensor on it and program it so that you could have the keys do what they do, but if you wanted to, say, use it as a volume control, you could sweep your hand from left to right to drop your system volume by 10%, and then from right to left to up it by 10%. Not particularly useful, especially considering I have an encoder on my keyboard that can do that, but it would be a cool thing to do, and having this there would just make it very, very easy. Once again, it's the Xiao, it's the RP2040 version, and so it's very easy to hack it and do completely what you want with it, but it also uses the CircuitPython keyboard library that I always forget the name of. CircuitPython has firmware KMK, an advanced but easy to use firmware written in CircuitPython. So that's the DIY side of it. However, if you are a mechanical keyboard person, one of the things you might appreciate about this is the fact that it also uses the same hot swappable no solderness stuff that you can use for swapping out keyboard keys as well. So if you have a few of your favorite switches lying around, of which I had on my desk until I actually tidied up. Yeah, would you look at that? I shouldn't be so amazed that I've tidied up in here, although I am. Anyway, you can put your own keys on this is the point. You can swap it out for whatever switches and keycaps you want, and they just seem like really nicely built things. Now, of course, this is a pre-launch project, so there is no price for it as yet, but what you could do if you wanted to is nip over to the other page for what they had before and see how much each one of those went out for. So the cost for them in the end was the MacroPad 10 kit was $45, the knobs kit was $32, and the knob one was $29, which should give you some idea as to what kind of prices you may expect when this one launches. And as always, if you would like to find out more, you can leave your email address here. In fact, I'm going to do that. Look, it suggested me to do so. Ian@electromaker.io. There we go. As always, both of these will be linked in the description of this video, and I noticed there's a lot of really interesting stuff showing up on CrowdSupply quite soon, so expect more CrowdSupply stuff in the coming weeks. We are going to close out this week's show by looking at a couple of standout projects from the Electromaker website, one of which is very recent and one of which was actually from a while ago. I had it earmarked as something I wanted to talk about, but the opportunity never arose, so I'm going to talk about it now. And I'm glad that I left it a while because that project has had a very interesting update, and we'll get to that one when we do. But first, a remake of the Samuel Francis literary piano, which is a weird part of typewriter history. It's one of those things that gets called the first typewriter quite a lot. And in fact, if I play the... Oh, here it is right there. It's one of those things that gets credited as the first typewriter. People argue all the time about what the first typewriter actually was. But what was definitely interesting about this one is that what you're seeing is piano keys that produce letters rather than notes. And this is a modern representation of that. Now, this is a project from Tommy Bianco TM, who's taken their MIDI keyboard and is using it to type actual text on a page. But of course, once you start working with MIDI signals, then there's no reason why your typing can't start making music and start doing things like controlling these little NeoPixel panels, which is exactly what this project does. Now, I'm not going to spend all that much time talking about it because Tommy has made a fantastic video about it all. Once again, Tommy's one of those YouTube channels that makes incredibly high quality content that is criminally undersubscribed. So yes, I will leave a link to the project in the description of this video. If you click on this video and come through, you can subscribe to the channel from there. Now, the idea he talks through, the idea of the literary piano, talks through the fact that, well, yeah, if you're going to have keys, why not make music? And then again, this actual project is the walkthrough of exactly how that works. So you can capture your MIDI input using various libraries. I think he's using Pygame in this instance. Yes, and yeah, once you have that MIDI information, you can do a huge amount with it. I like the fact that this is sort of a three-way tutorial, because you're getting how do you turn MIDI into written text, which is an interesting project in and of itself. But once you've done that, well, why don't you just take your regular keyboard and then have it so when you type on your regular keyboard, it makes music. You're doing the same thing, but sort of in reverse by connecting it to a digital audio workstation, a DAW. And then once you've done that, again, why not send those signals back out again and use it to control NeoPixels. It's like a 3-in-1 project, and it is really quite interesting. Anyway, as mentioned, the video goes into a lot more detail about this, including how they selected which keys to have on which notes, given that they had limited keys, and a few other things as well that are worth watching the video to find out. As always, I don't want to spoil all of it. I want you to go and watch the actual videos I'm talking about. But if you are interested in more, including all of the code that you need, it's all in the project here as well. I am a little bit biased, obviously, because music and microcontrollers, I've talked many times about why I like this, specifically this stuff as well. Grabbing MIDI and generating MIDI is something I'm interested in, because I have, and unfortunately not finished to the point that I can post it on Electromaker yet, been working on something that takes my fit data from my watch that I run and turns it into MIDI data that goes through Ableton to make nice music. Problem is, right now it doesn't make nice music, so I'm not ready to share it with the world. But if you would like to know more about it, there will of course be a link in the description. Every now and again, a project shows up that I know I'm going to want to talk about on the show, and to anyone who will listen, but I don't necessarily have the time to do that in that moment. And this was one of them. When I first saw this, I was very excited about it, because there's something about the idea of taking old punchcard technology that was used to program room-sized computers, the mainframes of old, and yeah, making a tiny little Arduino board read it using light-dependent resistors and LEDs, some of the easiest to get and cheapest components out there. Now, this is a project from Nino Ivanov. I will leave a link to this project in the description of this video, yeah, you can read about it there. However, to really get the idea of what it is you're looking at, you want to click this link and head out to his YouTube channel. Another criminally undersubscribed channel, by the way. Please do go and give a subscription. And this shows exactly what is happening here. Now, the first few moments of this video are a vibe, mostly because at the time of recording this video, Nino had a very strong cold, so there's this amazing low, husky, slow voice. But yeah, not all of his videos are like that. Just in case you're taken aback slightly. And the video goes through basically exactly how this works. And if you would like to know it, there's no better way than listening to Nino, because the idea in theory is quite simple. You have light-dependent resistors and you have LDRs, and yeah, it runs code every time it notices there is light shining through or not, and then you work with the hardware until you get the hardware working just how you want it. The hardware theory behind it is actually quite simple. It's the implementation and the way it's presented is what makes it so fun. Nino's whole channel is very interesting, by the way. It's a massive variation of stuff. Everything from Roman batteries through to DOS games. I mean, does anyone remember Red Baron? I had forgotten this existed until then, which is sort of crazy. Yeah, various things to do with Arduino, general electronics, also book reviews, old book reviews. The Programmer's Introduction to Lisp, which came out in 1972, but this video came out 4 months ago. I believe the most recent video on his channel is still, yeah, The Art of Lisp Programming from 1989. 3 days ago, this review came out on the channel. I love the fact that he's delving into computing history and doing this. Anyway, the reason I wanted to point you to the channel is not only is the Arduino mainframe with punch cards on this channel, he's done more with it since then. So the follow-up video to the Arduino mainframe, one that is linked in the project that I'll be linking in the description, is using this Arduino mainframe to feed information into the Lisp interpreter, specifically Lisp code. So this is finding the factorial of the number 63, I think. And as you can see, as it passes through, it is sending all of this information into the Lisp interpreter. And it's a very elegant way of doing it. If you watch the video, he'll explain the Linux terminal command used in order to run this. And it's just basically piping things straight into the Lisp interpreter. And each one of these punch cards, as he points out in the video, is a labor of love. He doesn't have a punch. This is all just done with a scalpel, which, yeah, it just really appeals to me. This is one of my favorite sort of forms of just hacking around and making stuff just for the fun of it, because is there really any use of a punch card system that can send things into an interpreter to do something that you could type in a few seconds? Yes, the use is, it's very cool. It's very fun. I like it a lot. That has been our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. And as always, thank you for all of the support that you are showing us. Simply by downloading this podcast, you are supporting us. However, a couple of things that you can do to augment that support, for want of a better word, would be to check in your podcast app or whatever you use to get podcasts if there is a rating system, and rate us highly if you, of course, think it is worth a high rating. But as always, the way to support us directly is to go to electromaker.io/shop next time you need to buy anything to do with hardware or embedded systems, or even just the first Arduino hobby kit for a gift for a family member or something like that. All of that money is what goes into running this show. We don't run ads, we don't have a Patreon or any of that kind of stuff, so do consider that. Anyway, as I mentioned at the start of the show, next week should be our Maker Music Special. The Maker Music Festival happened last weekend as you listen to this, but I wanted to give myself a little bit of time to really look through all the entrants and work out which things would work out better on the Electromaker Show, and of course which things me as an ex-music student can't help but chat about just because they're so cool. So that will be coming next week, along with a new product of the week, which we'll get to. But anyway, that has been it for this week. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will chat to you soon.